I mean, I think you just have to ask yourself those questions and be honest. So I would say there's an element of I didn't have a lot of juice left in the tank at that point, so I just needed to be able to take the pressure off, but also I knew deep down I didn't have the experience. Like, I felt out of my depth at that point. I'd created something that was bigger than me. So when you talk about your ego, it's like, it's quite an easy way, because you could say, well, I want to stay in charge and this is my ball and you're not playing with it. If you look at it from that perspective, but deep down, I just knew I didn't have the experience. I didn't have the beans in the tank to still go at 200 miles an hour. And I wanted to learn. I was still hungry. And I know it's like, this is bigger than me and it needs to be given the opportunity to realize its potential. And it was the best decision I've ever made.
In this Sports and Outdoor Mentors episode, I chat with Rich Sutcliffe, the founder of Passenger, an outdoor lifestyle brand born to roam. Despite a rollercoaster first few years, sales are now on track to exceed £100 million. We filmed this episode at the Passenger head office, located on the edge of the New Forest on the south coast of England. I hope you enjoy the episode. If you do, please leave us a review or comment, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. Rich, before maybe we get into the meat of your journey as founder of Passenger, what would you like the audience actually to get out of this discussion? Is there anything that kind of stands out for you that's important for you to share?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a roller coaster. There's been so many different things. But I suppose the way for me to look at it would be like, what's really helped me? What are those learnings that I could just make people aware of, rather than saying, what would I like them to get out of it? Because there's loads. And me think I'll start off with a couple of easy things. I think the first one was, the biggest thing I've learned is to control my ego. I suppose, and there's a whole thing I do around this because it's become really important for me, is when you start out, you kind of, and it starts to go quite well, you're sort of, I know everything, I'm in charge. But what you quickly learn is it's the sum of all parts and you can only take it so far. And once I was able to answer that truthfully to myself, things became a lot easier. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of hardships around that. From when you make those decisions, you're no longer the shot caller, and you don't know everything, but it is quite freeing in a way. So I would definitely say number one would be to control your ego and sort of learn how you can utilize it. My role now is more a facilitator these days and trying to help make sure that we always bring it back to who we are, what we stand for, sort of why we're here. So it's freeing because you can sort of help guide and not have to do the heavy lifting because you're probably not the expert at it anymore, but you can make sure you help put them in the right direction and give them the answers to the questions. And often I say it's not the answers we're looking for or we can give you, it's the questions. So that's another area. And I think as well as it just proves, myself being an electrician, God knows how many, 13 years ago now, it sort of proves if you're passionate and you're prepared to go at it, you can achieve whatever you want to do. I'm no different to everyone else. I'm probably a bit stupider than most, but somehow I managed to sort of bring the right people together to elevate it. So I suppose, yes, if you've got passion, go for it, live for it, get out your own way. And just try and be a team player.
So you touched on it there. So 13, 14 years ago, electrician.
Yeah.
So how the hell did you go from electrician to founding a brand?
Well, I mean, yeah, where do I start on that? So if we kind of wind it right back I was an electrician, and I realised that it just wasn't what I was longing for. And truthful, I wanted to wake up and give a shit. That was the reality of it. I realised that it just wasn't fulfilling me. And the idea was, at the beginning, was to kind of create a brand and maybe it turn into a lifestyle. We can travel and try and find that balance in life. Little did I know the traction it was going to get and how far it could go. But the roots of why I started it are still very much there. And we try and instill those every day at Passenger. 13 years ago, had a crazy idea, brought it to fruition. I didn't know anything about brand, product, marketing, hustled in trying to figure out how we can create our first few products, find suppliers. Like blanks and quality blanks weren't really available back then. So we did everything by scratch and had to learn. And I think it kind of, within the first couple of years, it quickly became apparent that the brand was resonating a lot and really kind of getting traction and really getting a really good following. So that kind of put us on the radar quite quickly. And even though we were tiny, like we ended up going into sort of wholesale focused. Yeah, I did a few trade shows, and then we started making some noise.
But I find it. I mean, I think for anybody starting their own business is already a big step. It's a big, it's a big commitment for somebody to make. But also to found a brand, I would say, is even further, even a bigger step. And then if I think about the fact that it's not like you were already working in the industry, so it's not like you had particular insights already. So why a brand? Why a clothing brand? I mean, there are so many questions. How did it come to that? Because I get the part about, you wanted to build essentially a lifestyle business, is what you're saying, something that would give you the ability to travel the world, enjoy the world, use the product that you were maybe making and developing to do that. But yeah, why outdoor apparel?
So I think it all started at the beginning it was the brand. It wasn't the product. And the idea is we said, maybe apparel was something we could understand, and you're probably going to look at some cottons and some basic products, and that's where we'd have been looking at first. And it was more around focused around. I came from used to surf a lot, and used to love to travel and get away in my camper van and sort of get escapism wherever I could. So what happened quite quickly was the brand had surf roots, but we were focused around escapism. And that was a term that we kind of brought really early within the first year. And because of that kind of focus around escapism, travel, and the brand and the product, it kind of set us on that trajectory of kind of being sort of an outdoor. I still challenge that we are a true outdoors brand. We focus on the outdoors. A big part of what we do. We're creating more technical products. Our customer today is telling us that they're wearing our product to go further and longer in search of escapism. So we're needing to develop that. But that wasn't necessarily where it came from and where it's meant to be. It was, escapism. It was the kind of all the moments in between and the moments that matter. And that seems to be what's been important to us about being something different. So then the idea is you create a brand so my passion is brand and product. That's businesses wasn't my passion. You have to learn it, but I was lucky enough to create the product and brand that would attract the right people. And so I was lucky enough to find the right people that when I brought them on board, were able to really put the infrastructure in place, understood how to build a business, how to build operations that could scale. And that's exactly what we did.
Okay. Amazing. And I think at the start it was just you and your wife.
Yep.
And in fact, you were still working, even I think in your own full-time jobs.
We both bootstrapped it. So myself was an electrician at that point. My wife was a designer for a fragrance company. So she was a graphic designer. So she was able to kind of help put a website together, sort of build some of the products. We designed our first few graphics on the road in our camper van under a sleeping bag in the middle of Dartmoor. So we had our dog there as well. So we would try and sort of live the brand, and that's where it came from. It came from real roots and sort of real honesty and, getting those moments of escapism. So, the two of us started it, bootstrapped it, put everything we had and some into it. My family, my friends, everybody thought we were mad. They're right, I'm a bit mad, but in a good way. And that's kind of, that's where it all started from.
And you've spoken about in the past that, you reasonably quickly brought on board other people into business. So I think you brought on board a designer and a few other people in those early days. When did you know that it was the right time to bring people on board? Because I think whenever somebody starts a business, you're kind of always a little bit hedging your bets, okay, especially when you're bootstrapping it as you were. Okay, I can do everything, I'll keep doing everything. I don't want to take the risk in bringing people on board. So when was that evident to you that, okay, now is the time that we have to bring in new people, supporters?
So I brought a designer on board pretty much instantly to help with some of the designs from the product side of it within the first year, and that was Katie Hayes, and she's still with us today. So she sort of leads our women's wear and the more sort of lifestyle element of the product, but she's really intrinsic to the DNA, and she's still massively in there today, making sure that all the new products we bring on board still sort of maintain the same values and DNA, should we say. So she's still here. So, and then I also brought on a couple other people. So there was Tom in Ops. He came on board within a few years. Then John Line, who took over my wife when she stepped down to have our child, and we can touch on that in a minute because it's a bit difficult. And we brought on Sam, our marketing manager, and all of those are still with us today. So they're still around, which is crazy. But I think it got to about 5 years, and we got to sort of roughly about $1 million turnover. Mixed between wholesale and D2C. We kind of stumbled into wholesale, and it was a good opportunity, even though that wasn't the plan. But we started to really resonate. But at that point now, I'd realised that I'd taken a bit of investment as well, just kind of from friends and family to help keep the lights on as such. Just real kind of, just seed capital, so nothing sort of really big there. And what I realised is the brand had real traction, had real momentum. And if I'm honest, it was bigger than I thought and bigger than what I could deliver myself. So I wanted to go out and find the right people that could help come on board and bring the experience and the business expertise that was required. It's a big decision, as you can imagine. You're sort of letting everybody come in and smash the walls of your house down, as I say it. But it was the right decision, the best decision. So anyone listening, it's not easy. Don't get me wrong. You do have to battle your ego, and you do have to make sure that you fight the right battles, but yet you don't know everything. So it's finding that sweet spot, as I like to call it, and that's what we did.
Yeah. So that was after about 5 years.
It's about after 5 years, yeah. Okay. So I brought in Justin Stone, who was the founder of Surf Dome, and John Lane as CEO, who was also sort of manager at Surf Dome. Two very experienced guys, brilliant. So they kind of brought on the kind of the right operational experience to scale that we need. And 10 years later, we're 13 years at this year, we're over 100 people.
Yeah, amazing. So you touched on your wife and that she stepped away from the business to have your daughter. So and I know there's a little bit of a story there. So do you want to kind of expand on that a little bit? Yeah,
so it was back in sort of 2017. We had a daughter born called River. But it sort of all happened so fast and realised it could be problematic. And I think she was like 7-8 weeks early. So John Line had just started, and so my wife got taken to hospital, and she had River. But River had a bivocal cord palsy, which basically meant that she has a tracheostomy because her vocal cords don't open and close. So her airway was limited. So that's been very challenging, and there's other sort of challenges and problems that go with that. But so my wife stepped back, and at that point, you're trying to sort of mentally keep a business alive, stay afloat, sort of support your wife. It's a very difficult and challenging period that kind of knocks you for six, but somehow we made it through it. And the business kept the lights on, and we kept everything going. And our daughter's 7 today. She's an absolute lunatic. She's, like I was telling you earlier, she's a chip off the old block, and I've apologised to my parents going, God, I didn't know how difficult I was. God, so the apple hasn't fallen far from the tree on that one.
So I think when you started, you had the vision initially to be more D2C focused, and then you switched quite quickly to B2B.
Yes and no. I would probably say I didn't have enough experience or knowledge to understand that we were going to be D2C or B2B. We were just creating something that had initially never expected to go this big. But the B2B opportunity opened up quite quick. So especially with my daughter going to hospital, was an area that we sort of moved into because it was just an opportunity there. It does dictate the way you want to operate your business and sort of your critical path and your product cycle and everything in between, which when I brought Justin and John on, we all agreed that we wanted to pivot ourselves to a D2C business. So that's what we were doing, and we were planning and pivoting just before COVID came along and basically forced a 2-year plan to happen in 6 months to keep us alive. So that was a very difficult period again as well. I don't remember COVID because I was just working to adjust and pivot with all of the day-to-day madness that was happening. But again, still here today.
When you brought John and Justin on board, did you already know them well before, or what was your approach to, because I'm assuming that they came in from a operational support as well, but also maybe from a funding point of view, from that side of things as well. So what was your kind of route to finding them?
So Justin, he brought us on board at Surf Dome. So he was aware of us. So he could obviously have seen the potential there. And we had a mutual friend in common that so we had a chat, sort of brought Justin up to speed with the plan, and obviously talked to him about the vision of escapism. And so he was obviously on board with that. So they came on board to so Justin came on board first and agreed that I wanted to bring somebody in with experience to a CEO. And obviously I was pretty burnt out from my personal life at that point. Yeah. But again, you just don't know what you don't know back then. And I couldn't have been the person back then to lead as a CEO in this business. I still had a lot to learn, and still do have a lot to learn today, although it's been a hell of a journey, and every day is a school day, and I've learned a lot. There's still so much more to learn.
So, but how did you, because I think you touched on ego already and the importance of somehow keeping that ego in check. Why was it so clear to you at that point that, okay, you do need somebody to come in and help you from an operational point of view? What were those signals that you were listening to? Maybe it was linked to your health. You said, okay, if you were burnt out, obviously you had, challenges with your wife and your daughter. But was there something maybe professionally that there were some warning signs that were like, okay, I'm going to need support here?
I mean, I think you just have to ask yourself those questions and be honest, and know that, like, how much juice do I still have in the tank? It's not necessarily about what you don't know, it's about what you're prepared to learn. So I would say there's an element of I didn't have a lot of juice left in the tank at that point, so I just needed to be able to take the pressure off, but also I knew deep down I didn't have the experience. Like, I felt out of my depth at that point. I'd created something that was bigger than me, and so when you talk about your ego, it's like, it's quite an easy way, because you could say, well, I want to stay in charge and this is my ball and you're not playing with it. But that's also, like you say as well, what happens if that fails? Because it was the likely chance that it would have. Is that not... So in a way you would say that I've controlled my ego, but at the same time, I've sort of didn't want to spend my life on something and let it fail. So again, there's an ego, controlling ego from that perspective. So what's the lesser of two evils? But if you look at it from that perspective, but deep down, I just knew I didn't have the experience. I didn't have the beans in the tank to still go at 200 miles an hour. And I wanted to learn. I was still hungry. And I know it's like, this is bigger than me, and it needs to be given the opportunity to realize its potential. And it was the best decision I've ever made.
And what sort of size were you when you took that decision as a business? Do you remember?
Sort of round about £1 million turnover.
Okay.
About a team of maybe 8,
okay,
10 at that point.
Yeah.
Small warehouse.
Okay, so around that 1 million, let's say, turnover mark, you started to sense that there was traction building around the brand. There was consumer demand. So how are you getting that kind of feeling? Where was that coming from?
So in a few areas, I mean, so in industry, that was a good indicator that what we were doing was resonating, whether it's the brand and the product. It was both. We were doing something new, something a bit more playful, less serious. We never tried to be top of the mountain or sort of core surf brands. We're very much kind of trying to blend sort of the lifestyle elements with the functional elements, so we can sort of this everyday to every adventure attitude. That was becoming clear, I think, especially from a female perspective. We were just doing something new. It wasn't, and I think and it wasn't from sort of we knew any better, or we were saying, oh, we're going to do this because there's a gap in the market. Didn't have a clue about any of that back then. We just sort of wanted to do our own thing. But because I didn't come from industry, it's like I didn't really understand why things should be done a certain way. So we didn't do them those ways because I didn't understand. And I think that's really helped us, that kind of naivety. If I'd have known how challenging it was going to be, you probably wouldn't have done this. So there's an absolute huge amount of naivety and luck on our side that's allowed us to do this. So that's something that we really do need to sort of be mindful of. And the sort of the team, we had an amazing team. They all believed in it, so that was giving us the kind of right signals as well. We just had lots of people coming to us and knocking on our door, even though we had some big brands following us apparently as well. I've heard many times now that we were often on the inspiration wall at certain headquarters, which is quite nice to know, really. So, but yeah, I think a lot of it has come down to doing things slightly differently. So in the beginning, we wanted to make 100% recycled cotton t-shirt. And I didn't understand why we couldn't do it. So some of the mills were saying, well, we can't do that. We can't guarantee the quality, so we can't sign off on that. So they offered me, I think it's like a 25% sort of certified recycled and organic T-shirt, which we managed to push to 50% because I was just stupid. I didn't understand why they couldn't offer it to me. I understand now, but it also by sort of having that mindset, it says the label that's a challenge and push things. And again, that's really worked in our favour.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And so, because one of the questions I had actually was, what do you think it is that has been the key to the success of the brand? And I was kind of reflecting before, and brands tend to either be very product driven, and it's really the product drives it, or it's the marketing, the brand, or it's the price. Those are kind of, let's say, the obvious ones. Looking back now, particularly those early days, what do you think it was?
I mean, the key to real success is having all three of those in sync. That's the key to it. And I think that's the holy grail everyone searches for. But then you have to have one that leads the way. For us, it was brand all day long.
Okay.
And our accessibility, for me, it was really important that we created an accessible brand that didn't take ourselves too seriously. We were playful, we weren't goofy, but it's like we always said for us, like sustainability shouldn't be exclusive. So it's making sure that we were able to open up those markets to everybody, and really just that was really important. That we wanted everybody to feel as part of this community that we were building, and that, in the sense of what we've done, we've built a community.
Okay, and you used the sustainability word there, and I know that when you started out right at the beginning, that wasn't really on your radar, but I think kind of in the first 6 to 12 months, you started to think more about, and maybe sustainability isn't the word, maybe responsibility.
That's the word, we prefer to use. I mean, like I said, it's back in when I started it, I didn't know anything about anything, let alone sustainable products, let alone how to even make responsible fabrics. So, so I didn't know anything back then. But like it says, very quickly, we're building a brand that's resonating, that's focused around escapism, getting outside, traveling, connected with nature, sort of surfing, hiking, all the activities you want to do. And we're like, well, surely if they're our playgrounds, we should be giving back. So very quick, we're like, okay, well, that needs to be our mission. So that within the first year that was. And then we introduced planting a tree for every order very quickly. I think we were one of the first to do that. I mean, that was pretty much within the first year. And that became sort of a real kind of pillar for the brand at that point, was if we're going to do this, we just have to be doing it this way. And it wasn't really a thing then. And very quickly, it soon sort of gained traction. I mean, now it's a prerequisite. It's just has to be done. You're not going to be around very long, and you shouldn't also be doing a business if you're not prepared to challenge. But it was a bit more difficult back then, especially with sort of minimums and being a tiny business. I mean, I had to hustle and figure out how I can share fabrics, and especially when the suppliers weren't that interested back then, because it wasn't a thing on everyone's radar, and we're a tiny little Mickey Mouse business back then. We were trying to sort of compete with the big boys.
Yeah. But I wonder actually if somehow, because you were still so young, still so small in those days, that actually taking those decisions was, at least internally, it was probably rather easy because you didn't have the history there.
100%, yeah. So we were super agile, and we've always tried to maintain being as agile as we can even today. But the more sort of an omni-channel, omni-global business, that's very difficult. But back then, as a single channel, tiny little business, and also greenwashing wasn't a thing then. And actually, this is something that's quite interesting. So back then, I could say, hey, we're going to plant some trees, or we're going to make products from this. And there wasn't really any backlash. So there was no risk for me to say something, get everyone to believe in it and do it. And if it didn't work, it wasn't the right thing to do. We learn and we try and adjust and move on. But today, because there's so many, I really feel sorry for smaller businesses. And I do believe, in a way, Passenger's a bit hypocritical, because we were able to build a responsibly focused business at a time when we were just poised perfectly to sort of just do these things without having to worry about the repercussions, and keep learning and adapting. And I feel today that all the small businesses out there that potentially could do such amazing good, they're too scared because there's greenwashing. So we need to figure out how we support those to sort of yes, greenwashing is a huge thing, and we don't want that to happen. But we also want to be able to transport the small people to sort of to test and learn and to challenge us. And that's who Passenger was in the day, a challenger brand that was able to do these things without having to worry. So I'm glad you touched on that.
Yeah. Okay. And why escapism? Why? Because that's really been, I guess, alongside responsibility, you've kind of had responsibility and escapism. They've been like the two red threads, if you like, from the very start, or almost from the very start in the case of responsibility. But why escapism? And what actually does that really mean for you and for the brand?
So, I mean, the reason I started Passenger at the beginning was like definitely a sense of lostness, and I wanted to find purpose and just love what I do. So, and I quickly realised it was never about the what, it was about the why. So this is very important at Passenger. It's not about what we do, it's about why we do it. It's like when you go for a surf, it's not about the actual surfing, it's about the why you're at the moments that matter before and after. And quickly we realised that passengers it's everywhere, and escapism is such a huge thing, and everybody's focused on the what, whereas we're focused on the why. And that, I think, is what's resonated, because we're able to be authentic and honest and build a community around that. And that's just, the key message at the start, as it is today. And the idea was we wanted to build this and build the brand around escapism, and it resonates with everybody. Escapism could be reading a book, getting lost in a piece of music, to hiking a mountain, to go and surfing, to getting lost in your van, to 2 years around the world. It's everything and anything in between.
You said earlier on that actually through COVID, it was a really challenging period for you operationally, because you had to really accelerate, let's say, the transformation of the business from a channel perspective. But from a consumer point of view, I wonder whether COVID amplified that kind of sense of relevance with the consumer from a brand point of view.
So there's two ways to look at it. I think there was, at the beginning, nobody knew what was going to happen. So we would literally every single day we'd have our sort of meeting. What's the updates? What's going on? What do we need to pivot to? So the first thing we did is we had to cancel orders going out to our wholesalers, which was very difficult, and that forced us to make that transition over 2 years to 6 months. If we hadn't have done that, the reality is we wouldn't have kept the lights on. So we probably dodged a bullet there by about a week by not shipping out the goods. The next bit was then, luckily we had a bit of stock, but we didn't have the right stock. So we then needed to get stock that was in demand at that period of time. So we had to figure out how we could get products made. So every single day was about us pivoting and being agile. So I think there was an opportunity there, but because we were super agile and tried to move with that, we enabled not only just to keep the lights on, but we were able to build some traction. I mean, it was horrible and brutal, the amount of work and the pivoting, but yeah, because we enabled ourselves to move with those punches. And I think that's what every business needs to do. Is there is there's going to be all sorts of challenges that come through, and you just need to be able to be nimble enough to adjust with them. And that's what we did to sort of build the traction. Then as it came out, we were able to get the right product mix. But yeah, it was challenging, but we did what we needed to do to keep the lights on and keep it going.
And so looking back at that let's say pre-COVID phase, if you could do things differently, what would you do? You could do it again today.
Oh, that's a really interesting question. And I've asked many people that, actually, and people have asked me that. So I'm going to say I wouldn't do anything different at all. And the reason, and I'm not saying I got it all right, I absolutely didn't, but it's what it's taught me along the journey now. So I have learned so much, good and bad. I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about market, product, industry. But it was all part of the journey. And it wouldn't have led me to where I am today if I could have made those changes. And Passenger might not be who it is today. So as long as you're learning and you're sort of open to that, your learnings, and you don't need to look back on what you can change. You obviously can help shape the future. So that's the way I would look at it.
So what if I'm not going to let you get away with that. So what would be like the number one learning then from that period? If you had to like really nail it down.
Oh, there's so many. I mean, one thing that stands out, and I don't know if it's the biggest thing, would be, I mean, don't get me wrong, so I've learned a lot about how to operate a business.
Sure.
So there's a huge learning before that. If I'd have known that back then, I could have had a much better business model at the beginning. But would that have allowed me to build a brand that it is today that's sort of that's done what it's done and really resonate with people, because I didn't know. So I may have focused on creating the business model before creating the brand that's allowed us to sort of grow. So there's that element to it. What I have learned is how to build product ranges and sort of architecture and how your channel makeup is. Like, I'm learning every single day. I've got some amazing people here that teach me every day. So about product, about marketing, about brand, about operations, about 3PLs. Like, it's all brilliant. So yeah, God, there is so many different things, but it's so good to allow those learnings to come to fruition.
So you've brought on board Justin and John to support you operationally in the running of the business. How did you find those early days with them on board? Was that difficult for you to somehow let go of, what was one of your babies at those stages?
Absolutely. And I think anybody who denies that or says otherwise is not being honest with themselves. But the idea is, I didn't go into it with my eyes closed. You ask yourself certain questions, and then you have to understand what they're going to bring and be open to be like, okay, if I want to make those decisions, this is what happens. It was the best thing I ever did for not just myself, for Passenger. Like, it wouldn't be where it is today without them. But does it come with challenges? Of course it does. You're bringing people in that don't necessarily understand the true passion and vision, or not certainly as they come in board, but they bring so much experience, so many expertise. They can also help you unleash those ideas and it's like brand and commercial need to live in the same world, but they come from two ends. And the idea is, if you can get those two spaces to collide, that's where the magic happens. And that's what it's taught me. So it's never going to be easy. So if anyone's listening there, it's not going to be plain sailing, but you've got to understand and try and make it for the right reasons. And they are the absolute right two guys that came on board. They've done a fantastic job and sort of helping me learn and develop, helping me take the whole team on the journey. They reinforce that. And I mean, Justin himself, he knows this. He's an absolute machine. He's like probably the best person I've ever come across in my life, and I try and keep up with him, and I'm dead within half hour. But so the idea is, it's amazing. The best thing we ever did, but don't be fooled that it's always going to be plain sailing. It's going to teach you a lot about yourself.
So how did you deal with those? Because I'm sure there must have been times when you had different perspectives, different points of view, and maybe he thought you needed to go left and you thought, okay, we need to go right. How did you approach those situations? Was it very clear that, okay, it's going to be, A or B is making that decision, or was it a discussion? How did that work?
I mean, it works in quite a few ways. I think it was often a discussion. And I think sometimes you do need accountability, though, and whether that's the right decision or the wrong decision, you need to support people. It's understanding, and actually, this is where they've taught me a lot. So there's type 1 and 2 decisions. I believe if it's the right way around. So a type 1 decision is a door you could walk through and come back from. That could be made instantly. You can say that decision. Type 2 decisions need a bit more thinking and maybe collaborative to be able to say, this isn't a door that we can open and come back through. So we're sure this is the right decision. So it's framing those sort of things up. But yes, you do need to empower your team, but also I needed to let mistakes happen as well. You got to understand how big a mistake is. What is that door coming through? And we also sort of, the way we look at things is we want to empower our team at Passenger. So I'm happy to be overruled, and I do want people to do that. And you sort of say, well, is it the decision you want to hang your hat on, is what we always say, is to say, if you're that passionate around it, you believe, is this the one decision that you want? And we ask them those questions, and we don't get all decisions right. Nobody does. But the idea is we try and minimize the mistakes we get wrong, and also try and really help inspire our team to be able to make those decisions themselves. And we're learning every day.
Mm. You mentioned team there a couple of times. So back in those early days, what were you looking for when you were bringing on board people? Because I'm obviously skills are one thing, and probably pretty clear of what you needed. Okay, you need somebody that is a designer. Okay, so the skills are reasonably clear. But outside of those skills, what were you looking for?
I mean, culture and fit are key. That's like number one. Like, there's no point having an 18 player that just doesn't want to work and fit in a team. So you need to understand and really kind of have an eye on what is the type of person. And so you need to know what your culture is. You need to know what is it you're looking for outside of skills. Then you can look at the skills. And I think that's the way I went. And we did some really good hiring. I mean, I didn't know any better then. I know a lot more now, and a lot of the team are still here today. So we haven't made too many hires. Nobody gets it perfect. But we try and help teach the team as well. But yeah, attitude is 9 out of 10, and we always say that. So then we'll look at the skills. And like you say, skills are trainable, but attitude isn't.
I think, attitude and alignment with culture, and we'll maybe come back to culture in a minute, it makes complete sense. But how are you taking those decisions about that attitude and that fit with culture? Because that's not something that's necessarily easy to measure or identify. It's really a kind of, especially in your case, obviously, you know the brand so well that is it a gut feel?
Back in the early days, absolutely a gut feel. You're kind of thinking, when you're a tight-knit community in a small team, are they going to fit in with the team environment? Do they have the right skills to complement the team? So somebody said something to me really early days that's always stuck with me, and it's don't hire yourself. And that's actually stood with me, because often you will try and hire because you're like, oh, this person will just say yes to me. That's not what you want. You want the opposite, but you want them to have the right culture and to be able to be a good fit. So rather than just sort of call bullshit all the time, challenge you productively and constructively and kind of figure out like how, and that's the type of person you want that's able to elevate a team together. So, because nothing's ever going to be right and nobody's ever going to agree on everything, but you want them to be able to get the best out of people and take them on the journey and get them to ask those right questions. That's what you're looking for in a team.
Yeah. And so going back to culture, what is the culture, would you say, at Passenger, and how has that developed over time since those early days of just you and your wife?
So I think intrinsically the culture values have maintained, and they're the same as they were back in day one, that we're a small business trying to make change and do things our way, but also have fun doing it. Find life balance. And that's hard when you're growing at the rate we are. We're sort of about 80 to 100% growth year on year for about the last 5 years. So that's hard to maintain. Yeah. It's a high octane, high pressure environment, but yeah, it's quite fulfilling, and we can help people go to the sort of areas that didn't really realize existed for them. That's hard to maintain that though. So we try and make sure that culture culture is really important to us. So we have Kelly as our head of people now, and that's something I'm personally really invested in, is making sure we find the balance of this culture. And yes, we want to perform, but we also want to do it in the ways that have a positive impact on people, and we have fun doing it. So we have a very low staff turnover, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
So we are definitely doing something right, but we haven't got it perfect, but we're getting more right than we get wrong, hopefully. But that's the idea, is now Kelly and Sam and John and Justin and everybody in the business that I'm probably not mentioning has all helped shape this culture, from whether it's values to performance to leadership. And that's something I'm investing myself personally in, is leadership. And I was aware that I didn't have any experience or know. And when you're a founder, it's almost you're just trying to dictate all the time. And that's certainly not a business you want. It's a dictatorship. So what it made me realize is, hang on a sec, I need to step back. I need to help empower a team to make decisions. That's why I said earlier, it's not always a bad thing making decisions. Like, the idea is we would never come down on somebody for making the wrong decision, because at least they're making the decision. How do we improve it next time? Could we have sort of got in the middle and avoided a mistake? But these are all sort of learning curves. But for us, it's really important that we empower people and we become the leaders that we can help sort of instill that culture and grow the business together.
And you said there that the business has grown, let's say, almost double every year for the last several years. And I'm assuming that the team has probably grown. Yes. Maybe not as quickly, but not far behind.
Pretty much
that.
Doubled every year as well.
So, and I'm assuming, maybe wrongly, but assuming that a lot of those positions are remote positions. So how, going back to that culture and retaining and evolving that culture, how's that been? Because that must be difficult as the business scales in terms of people, but also in terms of locations.
I mean, so we operate a hybrid remote business that has its challenges and its benefits. So, I mean, so in the early days, pretty much everyone was coming in because hybrid wasn't a thing. And John, one of our designers, he was coming from the Isle of Wight. So that's like an hour or 40 minutes to the boat, an hour on the boat, and he'd cycle for 40 minutes this way, even in the rain through winter. It's nuts.
Wow.
But again, so I don't understand why we didn't have these conversations before. But in the early days, sort of when we flipped it to a hybrid remote business, it meant a few good things as we kind of started the scale, is that we got better output, we're able to move faster, we're more agile, and yes, so there was some real benefits from that, but that side of it doesn't always scale. So it's hard to maintain culture when you're scaling, especially from a remote business, but we've worked hard in trying to put the right things in place. But as the business now is 100 people, the hybrid remote side, it has its challenges. It has its benefits. The output's much higher, but it's hard to get that culture across and those communication and those dynamics and those sort of the small details that really matter. So it's a huge learning curve for us. I mean, now, so I think we're up to about 110, and that's global. We've got a team in the US, small team in France, a very small team in Germany. So we're trying to figure out how we maintain this, how we scale it, how we kind of get efficiency. But so it's like I say, as I'm looking at it now, thinking, God, it's so difficult. We try and get everyone together every quarter.
Okay.
So that's something we do here, and obviously, so everybody comes here and some food. We all hang out. We sort of get everyone together and update on the business. We do a monthly called camping sessions where we'll all jump online. Some of us from here, and we'll sort of bring people through the business, where we are, what we're trying to do. So we do work extremely hard on trying to bring that remote hybrid culture together. The good thing is, again, is like from a staff perspective, our talent pool is much wider because we're able to go out further. But then that does come with its challenges. So it's two sides of the same coin that you're trying to get the wins in both areas.
You mentioned the international aspect of the business, and you started out, obviously, I believe, very focused on the UK and Ireland.
Yep.
And then probably the next market or the next priority became the US, I believe.
Yeah.
So when you transitioned from more of a UK focus to a international, or at least UK and US focus, what were those challenges that you faced in those kind of early days of that evolution, that transformation in the business? I
mean, there's lots of different challenges. So, I mean, so we always focused on the UK. And we were selling D2C and B2B outside the UK. We've always had a strong appeal in Germany. So we decided as number 2, we would sort of expand into Germany, just because the traction was already there.
Sure.
But again, there are the difficulties with obviously Brexit and not being part of the European Union. That makes it very challenging. So that was a big challenge in itself, and still is today. So we've had that element to navigate through. Obviously, you've got the language barrier, and then you've got the nuances of products. So there's always those elements that come into it. Same as the US. The US is 51 different countries in one country. There are huge product nuances. There are huge, even in English spoken language issues. So there's so many nuances that makes it very difficult. But again, because we had traction in those areas, both B2C and D2C, it made sense that they become opportunities. And we have lots of opportunities, but we don't want to go too far into too many different countries. That's enough.
And has those product nuances, has that forced you to grow the size of the collection to address those nuances, or have you been able to blur things a little bit to meet both needs?
It's trying to find the balance and the sweet spot, really, because a business can expand its product range infinitely. It's probably not efficient to do that, but so the idea is to try and cross them over as where as possible and then manage those by exception. We're still learning. That's the reality. It's early days for us, but like I say, we only wanted to do it because our consumer we just had such demand there, so it made sense for us to be able to deliver on that, because we weren't necessarily servicing as best we can through product, operation, and brand and language. So then for us to then put them in focus means that we could service them. We can give the consumer a better product, better service. It talks to them more directly. It's the same as sort of as we're bringing sort of more technical focused products into the mix. That's not to say we're going to be a technical brand and we want to compete in those spaces, because there's many brands doing an amazing job. But what we're finding is that our consumer is taking those products in further and longer in search for escapism. Snow is an example. So we curated a small snow capsule recently, purely for the fact that it's being used there. We need to focus on it if it's being used there. So we need to understand that we can give them the right products if they're required. But again, we don't overstretch ourselves. We don't want we need to make sure that we're focused, but yet helping deliver on where we can. It's a fine balance, yeah. And we probably don't have the perfect mix yet, because who does? But we're trying to make sure we get more right than we get wrong.
So the answer to this question has probably evolved quite a lot over time as your role has evolved. But what would you see as your most important task or role as the founder of Passenger?
I think it's a really good question, and I'm still trying to find the answer to this from speaking to other founders and other people on the board. What is it your founder can deliver for you? So I'm still learning that myself, but I have two things that I think are really important as a founder. And I think number one is I need to maintain our purpose and our values, what it is we do, maintain that becomes priority, and often for us that's making sure that we are focused on our consumer, who we call the roamer. So it's always linked back to that, but yet we just need to make sure that we are staying honest to ourselves. And I think number two for me is I become a facilitator now, and this is where leadership and inspiration are really important to me. Is I don't have the skill sets like some of the others, and I brought experts in. So my job now is to try and help guide them, help keep everybody laser focused on the values and the purpose and what it is we're trying to achieve. But yet, as somebody taught me this as well, noses in, fingers out. That's what I have to do. And it's hard. And to be honest, sometimes I don't get it right, too far one way or the other. But hey, I'm honest with my team and says, I'm in a position I've never expected to be in my life. I've never been here before, so don't have any experience in being a founder. But I'll try and be the best founder I can be for you guys.
Yeah. I can imagine, getting that balance must be really difficult, particularly when, the brand is, I don't know whether it's too much to say the brand is you and you are the brand. I mean, it's at least the catalyst of the brand,
that's also something very hard, because yes, the brand is me to an extent, or in the beginning it very much was me, but now it's become more than that. So I would actually say it's a piece of everybody, and I've actually got up on stage here and sort of said that to everybody is, yes, it started with me, but now the reason we're successful is that there's a little piece of everybody in there, and that's what makes it magnificent. That's what makes it the brand it is today, and that's why we're disrupting. So everybody should be very proud of that. But on that element as well is, personally, you have to extract yourself from that, and that's really hard, and I don't know the answer. So anybody's here saying, what's the answer? And I'm still learning that myself. It's because you will need to be passionate. You need to live it. You need to cut me open and my veins read passenger like a stick of rock. But at the same time, I need to be able to take the emotion out of it and help support. So it's... I have no idea what the answer is there, and I'm definitely learning that and understanding it, but I'm honest with my team to sort of figure out how we find that balance.
So looking back, who have been the people that have influenced you the most professionally? Maybe you've just mentioned one there with Simon Sinek, but...
Yeah, great example.
Anyone else that stands out?
I mean, there's so many, and I would say there's so many more to come, because the business is getting bigger. We're bringing in more high-profile people that kind of add the next layer of just knowledge, really. So, I mean, I'm probably not mentioning enough, but yeah, so Justin Stone, as an example, he's been phenomenal, very good friend of mine now, but also probably one of the most impressive guys I've ever met. Super humble. So he would be up there. And again, I think every person needs that sort of person to help them grow. He's asked me some difficult questions, and he puts me under the microscope quite a few times. But he's made me be a better version of myself. Sam Wesley, who is our head of brand. So it goes about saying, if you're going to pass the brand reins on to somebody, and me being who I am and building this, you've just got to know that they live and breathe it. I know if I cut him open, his veins read Passenger like a stick of rock. But he's one of the few people really understood the details of Passenger and what it's trying to do. But my communication skills and the way I articulate things aren't probably the best. That's where he excels. So that's why I've always valued him. Paul Anderton, who I believe I know as well, he's taught me so much about product in a short space of time. God, the list goes on and on and on. That I've just called 3 people out of the cuff. I would say my wife, actually. I need to mention her because she doesn't get enough credit for getting to where we are today. But the reality is, if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't be here. And the fact that she's done everything else for our daughter and our home life to enable me to focus, she's done all the heavy lifting. So again, she's somebody who I hold in high regard.
So talking about their family life or home life, how have you managed to, or maybe the question is more, have you managed to maintain a healthy balance, whatever that is, between work life and home life, family life? And if you have, what's been the secret to that?
I'm going to say yes and no. So I'm going to say in the early days, I didn't have a good balance at all. I was obsessed 24/7. I was going to make it or I was going to die trying. That's probably helped to get where we are today, but I don't think that's healthy. But then obviously we had the difficulty with our daughter and it was a very challenging period. So I probably buried myself in Passenger, and it was probably an element of escapism in there. So again, there are healthy elements to it, but you also need people around you to help guide you and give you honest truths. I have a much better life balance now because we have a bigger team and the weight of the world is not on my shoulders. So yeah, it's getting better, but they're the sort of realities of it. It's a challenging one because on one hand, you will only be successful if you go after it and take it. It won't come to you. You need to make sure that you are there battering at the door for when the doors want to break down. You take the opportunity. But yeah, is that healthy to do that? Is it a balance in life? Probably not. So is there certain periods of time that you need to dig down if you're truly passionate about somebody? I don't really know the honest answers to that because I think they are totally unbalanced, but that's just how I did it.
What about when you brought on board John and Justin? Was that a catalyst for you to be able to maybe find a better balance?
I'm going to say no, not at that point. It is today because we were able to build a business to scale a team and bring more people on. But back then, so John and Justin both had a bit of time from what they'd done previously, came back in full of beans, fully charged and amped, which is exactly what you want. But me being sort of under the cosh, bit burnt out, I had to go again and dig down even deeper. So that was really challenging. Like I went through gears I didn't know existed. But that, which was brilliant on one hand, but yeah, so they're the sort of things that you kind of have to get your eyes wide open to, what could happen and what you set the journey up for.
What's been the most and the least enjoyable parts of your role over the years? And here I'm looking for 2 separate things.
Okay, that's a great question. So the least, I'm going to say, is a couple of things which probably everyone's aware of. So one of the least would be seeing negative reviews on product. I take that very personal, regardless of how much input I've had in it. I mean, back then I would have had a lot of input, and I'm still quite heavily involved in product. But yeah, I take that very personally, especially if you find that some of them are unfounded, because we're not often trying to make the best products in the world because our products aren't trying to charge the best product in the world prices. We want to try and find the right balance. So I take that personally. Seeing people leave, I take that hard, is whether it's our doing or their doing. There's not been many, so especially one of the guys, John, who's still with us today, like I said at the start, he left because he needed to figure out some things himself. He came back. So not only was that, there you go, I've just answered that. That was one of the, because something's very special for me. When our daughter was born, he came on board, didn't sign up to what he signed up for. I was sort of in hospital a lot, and difficult, but he stood around. So he left, but it was the right thing to do for him personally, which made me very sad, but he needed to go. But then he came back. So I call him the boomerang. So that was also the most enjoyable thing as well. And I think, in general, the best thing for me now is seeing the team, like when they really kind of get it right, they start flying and they get into that. That for me is the most enjoyable thing, to think I was part of that, and I helped put something together that enables people to be better than they ever thought they could be. And that is probably the thing I hold most in most regard, like the highest regard now, is the team that we've built, the culture, what we're achieving together. That for me is the single most important thing that we've done.
Great. You mentioned there about consumer reviews, customer reviews. Is that something that, as a business, you're following pretty closely?
Oh yeah, I think every business needs to have a handle, especially when you're growing as fast as we are. So somehow we're doing things right. Like, no business is perfect, and we're always trying to improve. But yeah, sort of seeing negative reviews come through, but it's easy to get fixated on the negative and not the positive. So we also try and make sure we balance that out. So we do look at feedback, as you would do as any business is looking at performance.
And what do you see as the biggest challenge for the business over the next, 3 to 5 years, let's say?
I would say the biggest challenge is, so we went from a D2C single geo business to an omni-channel business where we brought wholesale on board. And now we've gone from an omni-channel business to an omni-geo business in the same breath. That's the challenge. And to build a D2C business that's very nimble, very agile, can sort of utilize data to kind of dictate product ranges, that also has its own challenges, being so close to market. But the challenge now is to scale that whilst sort of maintain our agility, whilst dealing with the nuances of operating a global business and a global omni-channel business. That's going to be our challenge, with opening new 3PLs in different regions and managing tariffs and production and consolidating fabrics. So yeah, that's going to be fun times.
So what's the most valuable piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, a couple of things pop out. It would be, one of those was, don't hire yourself. I mean, it stood with me for 10 years, so it must have had some importance. Noses in, fingers out. I love that. That's really, really helped me and understand how to sort of be a better leader. I mean, there's been lots of advice over the years, but it's not necessarily the advice itself that I can remember. It's what I've learned from those people. And I think that's really important, that anybody sort of looking to, like we said, we talked about attitude, always being open to learning, challenged, and just trying to make sure that you frame up your challenges in positive ways to make sure that you get the best buy-in. So I think hopefully that makes sense and answered your question.
Absolutely. I think the don't hire yourself is a really good one, and you have to be obviously quite self-aware to avoid that that
stupid.
trap. Absolutely, yeah. But it's I think,
Do you know what? I think you've just said that's a really important, valuable lesson, is be self-aware. Again, it comes with ego, but you don't actually say, everyone talks about like this, like cause and effect. It's like, okay, if you control your ego, you become more self-aware. That is the effect. And that's really important. I would say that's something that everybody should take away. And I think that's the key to success in anything you do, is to be self-aware, where you're good, where you're bad, where you need to improve, how you communicate, everything.
What 3 pieces of advice, let's say, would you give to somebody that's thinking about starting up their own brand, whatever that might be, within the sports and the outdoor sector today? What advice would you give them?
I would say you've got to be honest with yourself how much you want it, because it's not going to be easy. So I think you need to have a sort of a realization and perspective. Unless you're very well experienced and you've got levers you can pull and you've already got contacts and networking, might make it a lot easier. So I think you need to understand, of any business, what it takes. You'll well understand this full well, is everybody thinks running a business for yourself is easy, and the idea is the buck stops at you. So you're the hirer, the firer, the finance, the product designer, the brand director. You're everything rolled into one. So if you really want it, go for it. I would say, as number 2, be resilient. You're going to have to learn to be resilient. And I think number 3, as we just said it, be self-aware, like understand your limitations, be humble, check your ego at the door. Or as somebody says, leave your ego at the door, no dickheads allowed. I love that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Perfect. So, if today was your last day at Passenger,
Yeah.
if you were going to hang up your shirt
Yeah.
and step away, what would be your message to the team?
God, I probably wouldn't give them a message, because I would just say, just mic drop, and I know that carry on doing what you're doing. Make sure you're smiling, have fun, and I'm very proud of what we've achieved together. And I even told the product team that at Christmas to say, you all know I'm product through and through at heart. But what you guys have done and the way we operate, not being so fast paced, is you guys should be so proud of yourselves. Like, this is coming from me, who started the product. So I'm very proud to see you all sort of flourish. It is a proud moment, just sort of seeing everybody, people just getting into their own, getting into the rhythm, challenging and making it better. And almost everyone needs guidance, but the idea is you can almost say, is I just sort of watch from afar now and sort of just noses in when I need to. But it's lovely to see, and it's one of my proudest things.
Great. Perfect. Well, I think that's a perfect place to finish. So thank you very much, Rich, for your time.
Thank you.
And for hosting us here today. It's been great to get to know you and get to know the Passenger business a little bit better. So good luck for the next 12 years. It'll be interesting to see where you are in 12 years' time, you and the business. And thanks again for everything.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Rich. If you did, I would really appreciate it if you could please leave a review or comment. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe or follow, as it really helps with the algorithm. Thank you for your support, and I look forward to seeing you soon for the next Sports and Outdoor Mentors episode.